We want it to feel kind of like lively and fun and interesting. Don't put this in, okay?
Maybe if we want it to be lively, fun and interesting, we need to get different presenters.
Don't put that in either.
Hi, and welcome to a special bonus episode of Art Juice. This is honest, generous, humorous conversations to feed your creative soul and get you thinking. And we've decided to do an extra bonus surprise episode because Alice and I have been doing a lot of talking over the last week or so with each other and with other people about the upcoming CVP program, Creative Visionary Program, which opens for enrollment today. We've been having chats amongst ourselves about what it meant to us and how it changed things for us, but we've also been answering a lot of questions in DMs and messages and emails and on Facebook and within our Facebook group. And we thought that this would be a useful topic to cover and that perhaps our experiences and our thoughts might be helpful.
Yeah, so if you know that you are not remotely interested in CVP, this might be one that you can skip. However, I think some of the things that perhaps we're going to talk about are applicable to work in general. We're going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter, so this isn't a great long episode, but we just thought that this would be a nice way for you to hear a little bit more kind of personal viewpoint, really, about CVP and what a difference it made for us.
So when did you take CVP, Alice?
Well, do you know, it's a long time ago. It's 2016. So this is the 5th time it's run, and it's changed in that time. I mean, the core principles are the same. So the core principles are design, value, color, texture, risk, and soul. And those obviously don't change. So some people this week have been saying, oh, the workshop's the same as last year. And it's like, well, the core principles of making art haven't changed from 2019 to 2020. It's still talking about the things that the most important thing to make your art stronger. The workshop this year has included some extras. So there have been more live sessions from Nick, and there have been those workshops. All of this is still available. If you're listening to this, you can still catch up on all of this, and you can still watch all of that free content until the 26th of February. So if you haven't made time, or you watched the first one or the second one, for goodness sake, make sure you go and watch the third one, because I was doing comments yesterday after the third one on using color went out. And I tell you, the comment feed went absolutely crazy. This is the one that people love. It's the one I love, because like color for me in my work is the most enjoyable part about painting. But the options on color, how we use color, are huge. It's endless. There is a world of color. So having this as a way to really understand it, I think, was the biggest deal for me. But yeah, I took it in 2016, which was the first time that they ran it. And what year did you take?
2018. So, okay. So 2 years after. So it had changed already quite a bit by then, I think, in the way it was run. And then it's evolved again since then. But I think always, so far anyway, improving. You know, everything gets better. We iterate as we go, don't we?
That's the aim. That's always the intention. And from last year and this year, having been involved as part of the team and, you know, seeing the way that they make decisions, it's always done from a point of view of what's going to help people get the most from it.
Yeah.
And, you know, the comments on the workshop this year have been, I can't believe you're giving this away for free. He genuinely wants you to make your work better. So, you know, that's why it happens for free. And it's only once a year, because it takes a huge amount of effort to create it for everybody, which I hope you've been able to see.
Yeah. And that brings up a really good question, which I've heard people ask, and I asked in the year when I decided to take it, which is, if I've had all this already for free, why do I need to go sign up for that? Because I remember thinking, well, he's already told me about value, design, and color and given me amazing information. I agree with you. The color one just blew my mind, because I'd always hated color theory. And now all of a sudden here was a way to think about color that I could get my head around and enjoy. And I remember thinking, is there going to be that much more? But although once I heard him start to talk about it, I kind of realized straight away, yes, of course, there's so much more. But what do you think about that? What's the difference between what you get in the free workshop and what you get in the full program?
Well, without going through all the details of the full workshop, so you'll need to go to the page and have a look at everything that it contains and how it's delivered. Colour, as an example, is 2 weeks in the full workshop. You've had a section of colour, so the depth of information is much, much greater. The support is there. It's available to you for an entire year. So the idea is you work through it in sequence alongside everybody else for the 12 weeks that the program runs, but you have access to it for a full year. So any time when you're working, you can come back, you can review, you can listen to things again that the first time you thought, okay, I got that. Then you go back and you listen to it again and you understand things on a whole deeper level. So your work will continue to change over the entire course of the year. I'm still making changes to my work now, 5 years later, as a result of what I learned. It's just so integrated into my practice. But of course, the other thing is, like, there's a certain amount that we learn from listening and getting these light bulb moments, but we need to practice it. Like, our art practice is a practice. So you have physical, practical steps that start right at the beginning and take you through an entire sequence of work that you can make all the way through the course to the end. So it's not just watching, it's doing as well. And I think that's the big difference. It's not just you watch and you go away and you get on with your life. This is something that once you actually do it, that's when it's going to become the thing that makes a difference for your work.
One of the things for me that it's great to learn about value and color and design, at least on a top level, as he teaches in the workshop. But it's also about what you want to say with your work and what you want it to be about, and or how you want it to look or how you want it to feel. And you really get into that in the beginning. I say we because I'm taking it again this year. I love taking it. It's a refresher. And it keeps me in that community. And when we run our private Facebook group, it means I know what everybody else is up to. So I say we because I'm doing it again. But that whole first few weeks, which is about focusing on yourself, what you care about, your visions for your work, your visions for your life, all of that is so important. Even before you start worrying about value contrast, and then you learn how to integrate all this so that if I want a sense of peace, or if I want a sense of drama, these are the decisions I need to make in all these areas. And like you said, I just keep learning about that. I'm still learning about that from the things I learned in those 12 weeks. It just keeps giving and giving and giving, and something will happen when I'm painting and I think, oh, that's what they were talking about, or yeah, remember when Nick said such a thing. It really has become part of everything that I do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those first few weeks as well actually. And actually that is a good point, is that those first few weeks, for people who are like, oh, I'm not organized. I was away for the first 10 days, the time that I took it. We were on a family holiday. I was packing when I heard about it, and there was this kind of emergency panic to get the money together to pay for it. There was no payment plan then. It was like, it's either a hell yeah, as Nick would say, or you're out. So I was away, but the first few weeks they're a little bit slower to give everybody time to get used to the portal with the way everything is structured. So it's obviously not run just within a Facebook group. There's a complete website and everything for it. So it gives people time to get used to that whole system, to order materials for the practical work. And those first couple of weeks are to do with this idea of looking at your work, asking the kind of questions that sometimes we don't get around to ourselves. I mean, I know we did Best Art Year Ever, and for lots of people, they really enjoyed that. This is almost taking similar ideas and applying it to your work. And we need to do that all the time as artists. I'm going to be doing that alongside everybody again this time. I do it on a regular basis.
Do you remember when you did that the first time? And I know you were on a holiday, so you might have been rushing through that part, but can you remember any realizations or just reveals to yourself about what you wanted to do with your work from that?
I think I found that a little bit difficult that time, and I think it might have been because I was watching and catching up while I was away. So the only way that I did it at that point was as notes in a notebook, not
Hmm.
even within a sketchbook. So it was much more writing based rather than anything visual. But I have shared before a couple of weeks ago, my scrapbooks that I've kept. What it did to was it made me go back to those, very much like you said when we talked about that, and think, oh, that's why that triggered something in me. That's why that's important. So I was so new, I think, to this idea of trying to pull threads from other things in life that were going to have an impact on my art. And it's not the kind of thing that's usually, or certainly for me, hadn't been covered. If you go to a physical workshop with people, they don't usually have the time to go through this.
Yeah.
So I think having the time to look into that was really helpful. But like I say, I do it again on a regular basis, and my ideas have changed. They've
Yeah.
developed along the way, but that was the first step for it. What was
I
your favorite
remember,
part?
oh, my favorite part was, well, two things. Color,
Yeah,
for sure, because I've got color theory books that lie untouched. Like I open them and then I just go, ugh, my brain shuts down. It feels like maths class or something, and I just can't do it. But
yeah,
so color, it was just a way into it that now I think color is probably the most important part of my work and the thing I look at other people's work. But the other thing was the loud and quiet conversation, which anybody who's gone through the free workshop has been introduced to the loud and quiet conversation. And I was just thinking when you were talking, I remember in the free workshop when he talked about that, there's a painting, my favorite painting I've ever seen in real life is Jasper John's painting Flag, and it used to be in a gallery in New York when I lived there, and I used to visit regularly and look at it. And I used to think, I don't know why I like this. It's just a flag. And why do I love this so much? But when you're up close to it, he had tiny pieces of paper all soaked in wax, newsprint all soaked in wax, which he then pasted to make the flag. So it's actually collaged out of painted and waxed pieces. And so there's incredible texture and depth when you get up close. And so I just remember the light bulb of like, it's the quiet conversation. It's the
yeah,
fact that when you get up close, it's so exciting to look at, is why I
yeah,
loved it so much. So it was things like that I was bringing in to, okay, so that I know that'll be an important part of what I do. And it is now. I mean, I sometimes I think I still overdo it a bit, but I want every single part of my painting to have some little thing happening in it, even if it's incredibly subtle, but not to be boring anywhere. So those were, I think, my two favorite things. But I also think I don't, just the way it all fits together, it gave me a sense that I had a voice. I used to think I'm like when talent and voices were given out, I just wasn't in the queue. I was somewhere else that day, and I'm derivative. Everything I do in my art is derivative. And getting to understand Nick's belief, which some of you will have seen in the free workshop, that we all can do this because we're all unique people. And so, of course, we all have something unique to say. That was the big freeing revelation for me. So now I could stop worrying and just start creating whatever it was I was supposed to create.
yeah. I think my favorite thing, which was my visceral reaction to watching him actually paint, not because I want to paint like him, but when you actually see somebody from beginning to end on a painting making moves like that, it just gave me such free license. I mean, like, I used to talk to my screen. I used to, what, you can't do, don't do that. Why have you just done that?
Why did you cover that bit up?
Totally. And it's not even now that I work like that in terms of always totally covering things up, but just physically watching those paintings transform and come to life had such impact on the license that I gave myself to create work in a way that I wanted to. And
That's a really good
I
point.
can't imagine anywhere else where, I mean, I know artists show things on YouTube, but not in that depth, not to that extreme, and explaining what they're doing all the time totally from beginning to end. And I think the whole approach of it, the whole feel of, I'm sharing this so that to give you the information to make your work better, was just, it was just a total delight, total delight.
It's funny because the other day I was on YouTube looking at your channel. Can't remember why. I wasn't stalking you, I promise. But on there was the first video of yours that I ever saw, and I saw it on Instagram. And I remember the feeling I had was like I was stumbling around in the dark and someone reached out a hand and said, "You're not on your own." And all you were doing was talking in your studio, in your home studio where you used to work. Can't even remember what you were saying. It was just normal talk about what you were working on. But I was like, oh, there's someone, she's got videos, I can watch them. You didn't have as many as I thought you were going to have, but you had videos.
Still don't.
And then you introduced me, to Nick, and it was the same with him.
Yeah.
As people have seen now, it's the generosity of just sharing with other people everything you know, not holding anything back. That blew my mind when I took that course. I can't believe he's not keeping something for part 2, but he didn't. It was all there.
Let's talk then about downsides, because the year that I did it, there were fewer people, and if you kept up and submitted work, every single piece got reviewed, which meant that every week there were all the lessons to watch, there were all the live calls to watch, and there was about 5 hours extra a week of every single person's image adjustments.
Wow.
It was it was a load to watch. And actually, and the thing that happened was, you wanted to watch them because you didn't want to miss out, but you did do that thing of going, where's mine?
Yeah.
And then, like, when yours came along, you'd kind of pay attention, and then maybe the person would make changes that you would feel, well, that's not really quite how I was working or what I was intending. And a lot of them were quite repetitive, because they're this, like, we have the same issues, like we all do the same things. So we all tend to do shapes that are about hand size shapes, and too many of things that are the same size within a painting, or I have a tendency to always put things up in the top right hand corner. I still do, but there are lots of issues that people do that are the same. So it was a bit repetitive. So that first year was quite heavy on video watching, like seriously heavy on video watching. And that's one of the things that's changed over time. So in terms of, because I know that this is one of the questions that comes up, and I'd be really interested to hear you explain. People say, well, I want individual feedback. This is quite expensive. I want individual feedback of my work. How am I going to get that? So from your point of view, how do people get feedback from the work? And then I'll chime in if there's anything that we've missed.
Well, that's interesting, because by the time I did it, there was not so much individual feedback. So when I did it, there were about 500 artists took it, I think, that year, and we didn't get individual feedback. We could submit work for calls, for live coaching calls, and if the work was suitable to teach other people, they would choose your piece and edit and adjust it. And for anybody who doesn't know, image adjustment just means that they take your painting, put it in Photoshop, and make suggested changes to show you how you might apply the principles. I've never particularly felt I benefited from that. I don't like that. I don't like someone else touching my paintings or changing them. I think I have to find my own way. What I loved about the way it's taught is exactly that it wasn't about, let me take your hand and show you how to paint a picture. Let me tell you what you've done right. Let me tell you what you've done wrong. I think of it as that saying about, do you want to give a man a fish or teach a man to fish? Or a woman, if a woman wants to fish. But do you want to, I wanted to learn how to fish. So I wanted to learn how to critique and adjust my own work. And I find it very difficult when someone critiques or adjusts my work to view it dispassionately. But when it's somebody else's painting that's up on the screen and that's being shown, I can really see what's happening and really understand it, because I'm not attached to that work, and I don't know why they were doing what they were doing. Or so I love that aspect of it. So the way they did it, and I believe the way it will be this year, is they choose images that they feel will be most helpful to everyone as a concept, and then they edit it and explain it to you. But you don't have to watch hours and hours of video waiting for yours to come up. You get to learn from seeing what they're doing with other people's work. And I just found that invaluable. Invariably after those sessions, I would go make changes to my own work, because
I think when it's your work, you've got your fixed whatever you had in your mind already while you were making it. So when somebody makes a change, if it doesn't tie in with that, it's either hard to break away from what you were already thinking, and it can also be hard to then get away with from what they have then proposed is a change. And none of these proposed changes are ever the one solution for it. They're just ideas and suggestions. So I think that's perhaps why it's helpful to see more on other people's work. But I just want to say how we do this. But if you don't know what we're talking about, you can find out more about what the whole CVP program involves if you go directly to this link. It's bit.ly/CVP 2020, or there's information on both of our websites. So that's alicesheridan.com or louisefletcherart.com. But in terms of feedback, what happens in terms of your own work is most of the content is within a whole membership portal, so it's all organized for you. You go through, lessons are released week by week. There's live coaching twice a week. There is a Facebook group, and within that Facebook group, they create an album for every single person that takes part, so that you have a place to upload your work, so that you can look at it and see the progress from week 1 all the way through to the end. Then there is also an album each week, which is where you would submit work to, and that's where the coaches draw examples from in order to teach. So that's how the involvement goes with your work and what's used as part of the coaching calls. I think I've covered that.
Yeah. And I think I've heard so many stories. I never went to art school, but I can't count how many artists have told me that they were destroyed by a critique in art school, and that it was horrible and mean and cruel. And the thing about the feedback I loved in CVP is, first, it was generous and kind, always, never cruel. And secondly, as I say, because you're not being critiqued in front of a bunch of people, you can very happily stay in the background and just learn if that's your comfort zone. If you don't want to submit work, you don't have to. And I think I only submitted one piece in the whole course, and it was with a specific question, which was answered for me. And
yeah, and as the coach, I would definitely say that if you want specific feedback, if you, within that kind of question of the week or challenge of the week, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be called this year, if you just post your image, it's less likely to be used unless it's a particularly excellent example of something that needs changing. Whereas if you post a question alongside it that we feel that other people at that time, we can take the pulse, we can feel what's going on in the group, and we can feel generally, and it changes from year to year. So the kind of questions that are arising, if we start to see a lot of those coming up in the group, that's specifically something that we're going to pick up on and use. So if you really want that, just make sure, in the same way that I would recommend everybody posts on social media, post something alongside it so that there's something for us to respond to, so that the team and the coaches can look at it and go, right, that's something that I can really help that person with, and then that will also help others. So that's quite a good little tip that came out.
I love that tip for Facebook in general, because people will say, why didn't I get any comments on the work I shared in a Facebook group? And it's usually because they didn't ask for anything specific or say anything specific, and so people don't know what to say. So I love that anyway. Other downsides, what about the amount of time needed to do it? Now, when I did it, I was working full time, and so I had to do the CVP work in the evening, usually about 9 o'clock, I would go over to the garage where I work and watch videos and do a bit of painting. How many hours do you think it takes a week for people with busy lives?
Well, the actual lessons are short chunks. So they are between, how many do you get each week? Maybe 5 video. It
Yeah,
varies from week
up
to
to about
week, but
maybe 7, 5 to 7,
as
do
I
you
say,
think?
3 to 7
Yeah.
each week. And those vary between maybe 7 to 10. Sometimes you get a longer 12, 15-minute one. So that's probably 45-ish minutes to watch the whole week if you were going to sit down and watch it all in one go. And then, of course, there's your own time. And Nick advocates that we do little and often. So if you can do 20 minutes, half an hour, this was a real revelation for me. Before then, I felt like it wasn't worth me coming to the studio to paint unless I had a 3-hour chunk of time.
Yeah.
And the way that the lessons were released for me is that they used to come out on a Friday so that people had time to work on it over the weekend. But for us in the UK, that meant that they used to arrive at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, which was exactly when I had both children home from school, and like my entire week had just finished and I had no time now to do anything. But it's fine because you can watch those. You can start thinking about what you're going to be working on your own panels that you work on through the course. And then you can go back and do that whenever you've got the time in the week. So as long as you've got, I would say, if you had 3 sections of painting time within a week, some people do it all in one go and like on a Sunday afternoon or something. But if you had 3 little moments of painting times a week of between 20 to 30 minutes, you make progress.
Yeah, I agree with
20.
that.
Yeah.
I did a
And
lot more because I was so into it. I mean, I was for 12 weeks, I was immersed in CVP, and I did a lot more. And that's the thing, you can do as much or as little as you want. I watched every coaching call. Nick kept saying, nobody listens to all these coaching calls. And I
I
was
know.
thinking, but me, the
Yeah,
dweeb in the corner listens to everything.
but some people wait, some people save the coaching calls and they don't watch them live during the course
Right.
because you get access for the whole year. What some people do is they watch the lessons, they do the work, and then when the kind of live 12-week interaction is finished, they go through and they watch everything again. And that time they layer in the coaching calls because then it feels like you're getting an extra layer of information at a later date. So there isn't, there's all sorts of extra tips that happens in the coaching calls. And what we do on those is we do image adjustments, we have physical demonstrations, we have examples of other artists' work we show, we talk about how that applies to what we're learning each week. So they're quite kind of mixed, multi-interest calls. It's not just us sitting talking to a screen. Takes a while to put them together, it has to be said.
Now, we have had quite a few questions from people that have come into us that have been asked over and over again. And so why don't we quickly, because I think we're going on quite a bit, as we usually do, why don't we quickly whiz through some of the ones that have come up over and over again and see what we think? So many people have asked us, does it work if I do representational work? So Nick's an abstract painter. How does this work?
Yeah, and I don't want to do art that looks like Nick's, but what if I don't paint triangles? And
we don't paint triangles.
Yeah, it totally fits. The whole principles totally fit, whether you're doing a landscape or still life or portraits. The idea of how you are choosing to use these differences will fit your work. Any painting is a collection of different color and value, shapes and marks on a flat surface. That's what it is. Now, Nick goes so far as to say that this applies to sculptural work as well, and I think it does. And there are people, there was even, I'm thinking of Sue McNenly, who is a jeweler primarily, and she took it a couple of years ago and found it had a huge impact on the way that she actually conceived of all her work together. So she works with silver work, gold work, and encaustic all together. The actual physical practical exercises are painting based. So I think this is one of the things that is worth bearing in mind. If you only want to work in watercolors and you love working in watercolors, all of these principles totally apply. The way that he teaches, he encourages you to work in a particular process using acrylic paint because you can make changes quickly and you can learn from it. I would recommend that you follow that because that's the learning process. Then you can go away and apply it to exactly how you work, to watercolor, any oil, anything. But the way of learning, I think the way he teaches, he has got years of experience of teaching this way, and he teaches this way because it allows people to make changes. Remember, what we're doing is taking what you know already, learning how to work in a slightly different way. But representational work makes perfect sense for this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference whether you're drawing something that is a landscape and a tree and a house or abstract work. It's still ultimately about what you're putting into that painting that's going to make it unique and special, that's going to make it jump off the wall for somebody else. Does that answer that?
It does. And one of the things I should quickly say here, because we haven't mentioned, I don't think yet, is that during CVP, for anybody who signs up through us, we're running a special Facebook group where you'll be able to talk to us about your work or talk to the group, ask for support, ask for feedback. And that turned out to be really valuable last year. And so if you're doing representational work and you're in the big CVP program and you feel like most people are abstract and you want extra guidance and support, you can have that with us. But there are other representational painters every year and some really good ones as well.
And I think, like anything else that's online, what tends to happen is you find other people who are interested in similar things than you are. I mean, I've made some particularly good friends with a couple of artists, primarily because we were similar ages. We had children similar age. We had similar struggles about finding time, working alongside children. Our work is very different. We live on opposite sides of the world, but there are always some people within a group that you kind of chime with a little bit more. And the big group, we don't know at the moment how many people will take this. There are a number of alumni retaking it for all the reasons that Louise has said. So when you look at the numbers in that big group, bear in mind that a lot of those people, they're not all people taking it for the first time. They're people who know the system, they know the process, they have that lovely relaxed feeling of knowing what's coming ahead, and they can be there to help you, but it's not all new beginners. So, or people who are new to the program. So when you look at that number in the big group, just remember that includes a whole load of people who are retaking it as well. It can be a bit daunting, that big group. And certainly I would advise that there are ways that you want to change your notification setting, but the group that we will be running will for certain be a lot smaller than that. It's not an official CVP group. It's just something that we do as an addition because we felt it would be helpful for people. I think we need to talk about the biggie, don't we? Which is the
money.
Cost of it.
Show me the money.
It's a biggie. It is a biggie.
Huge for me when I took it. It was huge. I had two things that happened. I just had an exhibition in a very small local gallery where I'd sold some paintings, equaling about £1,500 in sales for me. And we were not in a good position financially, particularly at that time. And we just had a big tax bill and blah, blah, blah. And I was quite nervous about saying to my husband, I want to spend this money. He's super supportive, but it's our money and we had bills to pay and things. And I just made this money, which had given us a bit of relief. And then I was saying, but I want to use it. And so I actually took him to the pub, I remember, and bought him a drink. And then I said, there's this thing I want to do. And of course he was fine, but it was a huge leap for me. It didn't matter what his reaction was. It was my kind of guilt over, this is our money and I'm taking it for myself. And he said, no, it's your money, it's your paintings, but we've always shared our money. So it was huge. And I felt it was a huge financial risk. But can I just say, and this is, this sounds nuts, but when I look back on it, it wasn't a risk, because the amount of money that I've made as a result of taking that course that I could never have made if I hadn't taken it. But you don't know that when you're going in.
Let me put this into context a little bit as well. So I don't remember exactly which years were which figures, but this is $2,000. So at the time, that for me was about £1,600 UK money,
Yeah.
and there was a long section of time where I was making about £2,000 worth of sales from my work in an entire year.
Yeah.
So this was like my entire revenue almost going back into one thing. And it was a bit, I had never spent that much money on a single thing ever before in my life. Certainly not on something that just I enjoyed. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe a car or new sofa or something like that, but not on just me. And it was I didn't tell my husband. I took money out of my ISA, and because I just felt this is going to make a difference. So the decision for me was, if I want to do this, what I've got to be damn sure is that I work through it and it makes a difference for me. And then I think the year after, like I said, I can't remember exactly, but this was definitely the point that my art, not only my art sales, but my art sales, my confidence, scaling up my work. When you start to make bigger work, it starts to get more expensive, all of that thing, it tripled, and then it tripled, and then it tripled.
Yeah.
It was, but you've got to do the work. Just buying the course isn't going to be the answer. So, and the other thing is, they do have a payment plan now. So you can split it. That does mean that you end up paying a little bit more. But that is an option for you. And the other thing is that there is a 30-day guarantee. So if you join and then within 30 days you decide it's not for you, you can get a complete refund. And lots of the courses that are out there that are at this level say, oh, we'll give you a refund if you prove that you've done the work. They don't do that because there is no interest for them in having people within the program for whom it's not a good fit. That's totally what that refund is about.
I think what makes it such a good program, actually, because I've taken other courses also and never anything that costs that much. The cost means that the other people in it with you are serious about it too and committed, because like you say, when you've paid that money, you do the work, and that creates this little pod of creativity and learning and growth together, which I think is really valuable. But yes, it is expensive, except once you've done it, you realize it's not at all expensive for what you got. The value. Like I went on a workshop 3 days in the Dales with David Tress. That was £500. That's about $700. That was 3 days. This was 12 weeks of intensive learning every day.
Yeah, since then, this was the first time that I'd done it, and I remember thinking, I don't even get how this is going to work. How can you teach art online? This is like, surely I need to be somewhere with somebody actually showing me. So this was the first thing like this that I did. I have done one thing every year since that. Actually, this is obviously the magic price point. Everything else has been this same price point every year since. Nothing else comes close.
Yeah.
Nothing else comes close in terms of, like, if you think that this is going to be a lot of people, one of the things that I took, I think there was something like 4,000 members. I mean, it was, I know.
This wasn't an art thing, though. It wasn't.
No, that wasn't an art thing. That wasn't an art thing. But just in terms of the content and the way it's delivered and what it gives you to go away with, I think it really is good, and it hasn't changed. The price hasn't changed since you started it. So
that is quite amazing. Actually, it hasn't gone up.
Yeah.
One of the big concern that's come up a few times from people I've talked to is, am I ready? Am I at the right level for this? And actually, that's come from really experienced people saying, is this too junior for me? And it's come from really beginner people saying, am I ready? Somebody said they have all kinds of different work and she doesn't have anything consistent. So what's your thought about that?
I think from watching people go through it at different stages that you get different things out of it. I think when you come into it more at a beginner stage, there are certain things in your work that you don't have because they come from experience. But a lot of the way we learn about art is practice. It's trial and error, if you like. Experience is trial and error. It's doing something and learning from it. And this just makes that so much quicker, like so much easier to have that support. Like when I look back at some of my early paintings and I'm like, oh, that's why that didn't work. That's so obvious now. Now, it still means you need to practice and catch it. So I think that when you come to it a little bit earlier on, it really helps you understand your work, understand what you want to do, and you use these principles in order to make sure that you're getting there quicker. But I also think that people who are doing it later on, so people who are a little bit more experienced, you can go much deeper into how all these different elements and all these different principles work in your work. So you can start to look at the things that are going to make it really sophisticated, really nuanced, and take it to that next level. So, and we know this from people who come back and take it year after year, because that's another question. Why would I do it again?
Yeah.
Because you go through one stage and you learn it in one way and then you do it again. Just a point on that, when you retake it as an alumni, you are not paying that same price again. So you get it at a really good deal again, because he knows that when you go through it a second time, your work is at a different level and you understand things and you put them into action in a different way. So the only thing that I would say that it's not ready for is if you're not ready to if you've got a really fixed idea of the way that you want to work and exactly what you want to do, then I think it's not the right thing for you. So and that doesn't just come down to subject matter. That comes down to being open-minded about the way you learn and the way that you take responsibility for bringing ideas into your own work. So if you just want something that's a very straightforward, okay, here is a painting, I'm going to show you how to paint it, that's not what this course is. That's not what he's intending to do, and that's not what you'll get from it. Anybody else who it's not right for? It's not right for you if you're just going to buy it and think that that's going to be the solution.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of people who buy courses and then don't do the work. And actually, I must put my hand up in a totally unrelated thing. I bought 2 courses recently and then did nothing about them. Didn't even watch a single call. They were cheap courses. I wouldn't have spent this much money and then do nothing. But yeah, if you buy it and then you just let a big problem I see is people letting the more experienced artists intimidate them. So they see someone they see an alumni in the group post their work, or someone who's, very experienced artist who's taking CVP, and then they let that intimidate them. You have to focus on yourself and your improvement from the beginning to the end, and not focus on the people around you, because number one, there are a lot more experienced people on it, as well as a lot less experienced people. There's always all the scale, everyone at all levels of that. But also, then you're just wasting your time comparing yourself to other people instead of squeezing the most out of every second of what you're being given. Is, it's such a waste to compare to other people. So I have seen a few people get derailed by that. So I would say it's important to have a talk with yourself first and make sure that you're gonna, look at what you do in the first painting week and look at what you do in the last painting week, and only compare to that, and don't compare to anything else.
And one other thing that prompted an idea in me is, I think one of the problems that as a coach sometimes we see is if people, if they've missed a few weeks, they jump into like week 5 and they've skipped weeks 2, 3, and 4, and they think, oh, I'll just come in a week 5. You missed the foundation, right? There is a reason why this is structured in this way. There is a total reason why it starts with what it starts with and it goes through to the end. So I think it's important that you do follow the process that it's teaching you, because that gives you the grounding. It's like it starts really early on with just using black and white. I hated that. Actually, I tell you what I hated even more is I hated the limited color palette week.
That really? Was all. I love that. That was like, that opened the doors for me. I still use that limited palette a lot. Yeah.
Well, I think I
That's
might
it.
enjoy it a little bit more now, but it felt like a really awkward halfway
Yeah.
stage. But
I hated black and white, but now this time I'm looking forward to black and white because
well, there you go, isn't
I
it?
think
So,
it'll
but
be good.
I think my point is that every stage has a purpose for being there.
Yeah.
So it's not a kind of go in and cherry pick and, oh, I'll come in and I'll just get texture at the end because that's the bit I really want to learn. You've got to understand how texture fits in with all the other things. So yeah, I think that's kind of it, isn't it? So, I mean, all the questions about like physically how it works, what you log into, the portal, what days, what times it is, all of that is covered on that link. So that's bit.ly/CVP2020. And if you've got more questions for us, come over and join our current group. So that's called the Juiced Up Workshop Buddies Group 2020. And we're discussing it in there. Not everybody will take this. This is not the right thing for everybody. So purpose of this really is just to help you make your mind up. This is the year for you.
You can also email either of us. If you have a question you don't want to ask in front of other people, you can email us or message us on Facebook or DM on Instagram or wherever you contact people. And we'll do our best to get back to you ASAP, but it is kind of a busy time when we say ask us questions, we get lots. So we just give us a day or two to respond.
Yeah. So you have got until February the 26th at 11:59, so just before midnight. That's Pacific time. So if you're listening in the UK, if you really want to leave it that far, you can have a sleepless night on the 26th, and then you can get up before you can get up before 8 o'clock in the morning and do it then, but don't miss it. Basically.
Yes, when they close it down, they do close it down. That's it, because the program starts. It
does
the
next day.
So
it starts the next day. Yeah. So not that much longer, but that's why we thought we would just drop this one in as a little bit of weekend listening for you. Okay, I hope that was helpful.
We have another episode coming up on Tuesday, just as normal. This is extra.
Yeah, just because we love you.
Just like
we haven't had any sleepless nights recently at all. No. Or working until 2:30 a.m. Alice.
Oh, I can't do that. Oh no, 2:30.
I know. But you know what? I was just like happily in my zone, like doing all the things, and then I looked at the time on my computer and I was like, "What? That's not a good move. It's not a good move." But there we go. It's what happens in half term. All right. I think that's everything.
I think it is. So let us know if you get any questions.
Yep. And we will see you as normal on Tuesday. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Hello? Hello, Morgan. Are you okay? I'm just finishing up.
You still say you're recording?
Oh, sorry.